Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 728. I had the white pieces and start off with e4. My opponent goes e5, and we get a Ruy Lopez after the first few moves here. I decide to play with bishop to b5, characteristic move of the Ruy Lopez, and my opponent goes for the main line a6, not going for this knight of 6 Berlin defense that's so popular at the top level. So I follow the main move here, and then he develops his knight to f6. I castle. Well, this is the main line. And now he plays the move b5, which is, actually it's the way I play it. I play b5 and then I play bishop to c5. But b5 can also transpose back into the main line if you follow up with bishop to e7. So it's a very flexible move, and there's no harm in playing it here because white's reply is forced, and now bishop e7, if you see it's got a question mark there. I don't know why, because it just takes you right back to the main line. With rook to e1, the main line would go like this: rook e1, d6, and c3. And now if the knight comes over here to harass the bishop can drop back to c2. I just wanted to show that for reference. Let's go back to the game. I went bishop b3 here, and then instead of playing bishop e7 and just going into the main line, he played d6. And now we're actually out of the main line. And let's see, my pawn is hanging, so I played rook e1 to defend it. I looked at this with the chess engine, and there's kind of a nice idea here, similar to what you would see in the Italian game. And then maybe the reason why d6 is not the correct move order is you can actually play knight to g5 here. So knight to g5, it defends the e-pawn, which was under attack, and also hits the pawn on f7. And that's pretty difficult to defend. There's actually no piece that can defend it aside from the queen, and that's just not up to the job since we have two minor pieces attacking. So that d5 is pretty much forced, which is a temporary pawn sack. Turns out that that black, if he finds a move knight to d4, can pretty much recover that pawn. Let's see, white can reply here with either d3 or knight to c3, and the game continues with an edge to white. Black is wasting some time to round up that pawn, but it looks like he can grab the bishop pair here by taking my bishop. So anyway, that would be best play. Let's see, after d6, I just defended the pawn with rook e1. And now if he went bishop e7, we would once again transpose right back into the main line. But instead he went after my bishop, which is actually not that great a move. Let's see, and then d4 would be the main response here. And then after that, we're out of the opening book. The thing about d4 is, well, let's pause and consider this position. I've castled. I've got a rook on an open file. I've got two pieces developed. He's got two pieces developed, but his king is a couple moves away from castling, and this bishop has to get out of the way first. And also this bishop is kind of locked in behind the pawn chain. So, in fact, white has a lead in development here, and what white should really do is just ignore that exchange to the bishop and go ahead with d4, just opening things up as quickly as possible. So if he takes the bishop, maybe plays bishop b7 to activate that piece, knight to c3. Just continue with normal development, and white has a significant edge here. So I should just play a little quicker than the normal Ruy Lopez, and take advantage of that lead in development as compensation for giving up the bishop pair. Anyway, I didn't do that. I went with c3, so he had to take now, or else I would get in bishop c2, and we'd get a normal Ruy Lopez. So he takes, I take. He went bishop to e7, and now I went h3, which once again is a little bit slow. At this point, b4 would be a good move, shutting down on his c5 idea. H3 is not a bad move. It does keep him from pinning the knight, but he gets in c5, and so black is fine in this position. I can play d4, and so this is like a normal mainline Ruy Lopez, except that I've lost the bishop pair by giving up my light squared bishop. So it's a worse position for white than normal Ruy Lopez. So black is probably equal in this position, and we'll stay in the range of about equal for a while here. We we both make reasonable moves through the next sequence. Let's see. He plays queen c7. He's got to defend his e-pawn. I'm actually threatening to take that. Let's see. I go knight bd2. He castles, gets his king out of the center. Go knight over to f1, the typical maneuver in the Ruy Lopez. He goes rook e1, rook e8 rather. Knight g3. Defending my pawn so that if he exchanges here on d5, you know, that can unleash some pressure on the e-pawn. You always have to be watching out for that trick. Yeah, he plays bishop f8, which unmasks his rook. Bishop g5, get my bishop off the back rank, getting all my pieces out. Knight to d7, so he just gets away from the exchange. I was maybe threatening to take. It's not clear if I would have taken, because then he has the two bishops and I have the two knights. But it does mess up his kingside pawn structure, so maybe I would have. Anyway, he decides to keep the knight, and I decide to close the position. And these closed positions often favor the knights over the bishops. The bishops can have trouble finding good squares, so it makes sense to close here. He brought his knight over to b6. See, I went knight to h4, trying for some maneuvers on the king side. I would really like to get my knight into f5, but he prevents that immediately with g6. Let's see, I go queen d2. Now I'm thinking of trading off that dark squared bishop. And I offer the trade here, and he declines it by putting his bishop back on h8. And then I decide to open things up with f4. And you could question this decision. The engine thinks black is a little better after this move, but all within the range of about even. So he took, I took with the bishop. He brought his knight back to d7, maybe feeling like he needed some. Oh, he's looking at this square, the e5 square for his knight, which looks like a pretty good perch. So I bring my knight back to f3 to contest that. But he went over here to f6, a little bit surprising. The chess engine, by the way, thinks that a5 is a way for black to play. Keep this knight in the center, where it's got kind of a flexible position. This bishop maybe could come out over here or to here if that a-pawn were out of the way and activate on this diagonal. So those are some other ways to develop. So I wasn't too impressed with this knight f6 move. And also because I have this move e5. So the engine starts to like white at this point. Let's see. So, but this exchange happens. Pawn takes, knight takes, and we get a really complicated position where both of us start to make mistakes. So he moves his queen out of the way of the bishop, which is pretty natural. I was going to move my knight with a tempo. And then I hop in with knight to c6, kind of a tempting move. And it does lead to, it does lead to an advantage to white. There are a couple other moves here that are slightly better, though. The top choice was just bringing the rook to the center. That makes a lot of sense. And the second choice was pawn to c4, securing this this advanced passed pawn. And actually, I end up playing c4 much later in the game and getting a protected passed pawn, but I could have gotten it in right here. So knight to c6 was still good for white, and it was like the engine's third choice. Let's see, he went bishop d7, and now I went rook to e7. I was thinking keeping a rook there might be good. I thought about this knight e7 move, which was the chess engine's preference. And, well, maybe I just was not up to the task of figuring this out. Knight e7, let's put that on the board, is, according to the chess engine, is forces black to give up the exchange. Rook takes, and he gets a little bit of compensation for the exchange. He gets his pawn, he attacks my bishop. I just drop my rook back because my bishop is defended. And yeah, I've won the exchange for a pawn. So that would be best play. But I thought he had other choices, but I was wrong. Well, the other choices are worse. After knight e7 check, if he goes king to g7, bishop to h6 is mate. So I should have noticed that and said, this is a pretty attractive looking position. And let's see, if he tries king f8, the other possible move, there's only really three choices. This is more complicated, but it does lead to a material win for white. I thought I would be losing my knight at this point or having to retreat it, so I didn't. That's why I didn't go for this. But once again, this check, let's see, he can block with the bishop, and then the queen to g5. And the threat here is to take take the bishop, king comes out, and then play knight to h5 with a check, taking advantage of the pin on this pawn and winning the knight here. So that would win material. It's funny that there's no defense. I mean, it's still not clear to me looking at it that there's not any possible move here that saves the situation for black. But well, his king can't really move. Yeah, the king can't move at all. It has no legal moves. If the knight takes the rook, if the rook takes the knight, then he loses the exchange at least. Let's see. Rook takes. Maybe I throw in the check first, and the king has to move, and then I can take here or throw in that check. Anyway, yeah, it's complicated, but according to the chess engine, in all lines above material. So I didn't calculate that out correctly. Played rook to e7, and now this is back to around even. So he played queen to b6, getting out of the line of any discoveries with my rook, and I couldn't find much better than just exchanging, and all of this stays in the range of about even. Let's see, and I bring my knight back to e5 since it didn't seem to be doing anything there, and I thought I might want to bring my rook to the e file using that knight as a shield. He played bishop to c8, and I went king to h1. And king to h1, oddly enough, well, maybe it's not odd, it's a tactic. I just overlooked a tactic here. So here's your chance. See if you can spot the tactic that black has. Okay, pause the video if you want time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away now. The winning tactic for black is g5, just distracting my bishop away from defense of the knight. Bishop is the only piece defending that knight. Has nowhere to go that still defends it. And so this would go, well, best play would be to go ahead and sack the knight here and then get 2 pawns for the piece. But that would lead to an edge for black. So that was black's big chance in this game. Instead, he went knight to h5. I think with a similar kind of idea. But, well, this leads to exchanges and no particular advantage for black. So I don't have to move the bishop. I can trade off his knight. He took my knight. So we're even here. And I played knight to g3, which is okay and keeps it about even. An even stronger move here, though, was rook e1, pinning that bishop, leaving the knight hanging. We get to a similar kind of situation, but basically, he can take the knight now, or he can defend with f6. But what happens is that his pawn structure is a lot more messed up. He has to take the knight now. The funny thing is that, so just to show the end of that, he takes the knight, and I would drop my bishop back to g3. And we get this situation where the material is even, but his kingside pawn structure is a wreck, and this is probably a winning position for white. You might ask at this point, why couldn't he take the bishop instead of taking the knight? But, well, once again, queen h6. The queen is coming in here with a deadly threat. Yeah, all the way to h6, so threatening mate. And if he takes the knight, he can't take the knight because there's a pin in this direction. Queen is hanging there. So that queen h6 resource is important here, and that allows white to come out of this with an advantage. So, but knight g3 is okay as well, but rook e1 would have been better. Anyway, so this is all about even, and so we get into the endgame here with the queen. So kind of an interesting endgame. He goes bishop b7. And I would like to play c4 right away, but my queen is out of position. If I play c4 and he takes, at the end of that, my pawn on b2 is hanging, and I don't really want to give that up. So I defend my pawn with rook d1. There was one more clever move here, knight e4. It's another way of defending that pawn. Can you spot the tactical defense? Yeah, if he takes that pawn, then I have knight f6 check, winning the bishop. So defending the pawn with a tactic, pretty clever idea, and that's a better move than rook d1. But rook d1 does defend the pawn, keeps the game in the range of about even. He goes king g7. Let's see, knight e4 is once again a good move. But I had a different idea. But just to show the knight e4 idea, it's no longer about the f6 square, since I can't get to that. That's under control with the queen and the king covering it. But say plays h6 to keep my knight out of g4. The knight can hop into d6, and this starts to put some pressure on f7 there. So, and as well as maybe thinking of trading off that bishop. That's a possibility too. So interesting play. The chess engine thinks white's a little better there. I tried a different knight maneuver. I had the idea of I wanted to maneuver my knight to this square so that I could play queen to h6 and start chasing his king around a little bit. So I started with knight f1, but he plays a good move here, rook e2, just penetrating into my position. I didn't find anything better, and there apparently wasn't anything better than just defending along the second rank, which leads to these trades. Oh, I took with the queen, that's right. And then he went queen to d6. So, and I finally get in my c4 move. So I think I have some maybe long-term advantage here because of this passed pawn, this protected passed pawn. But the chess engine thinks that with correct play, white or black can still defend and hold this position. See, we go on a few more moves, and then he takes. Right here, the chess engine, and in a couple other cases, it wants to put the bishop back on c8 and try and activate the bishop this way, maybe pushing the f-pawn forward and giving some squares along this diagonal for the bishop. And it thinks that black can hold, like I said. So anyway, he went b takes c4. Now, actually, I start to get some kind of advantage. Goes king f6. Go knight to d1. I'm still trying to cancel that. Knight to d1. Still trying to figure out the right maneuver in the right square for that knight. He goes bishop to c6, taking advantage of this pin here. Clever stuff. Let's see, I unpin with the check. King drops back to f7, but I still can't take the bishop. Well, I can, but it's just a trade. And after I take the bishop, he takes the knight with check, forces my king up to h2, and then he comes back here with check and rounds up the pawn. So I don't even get a passed pawn out of that. It looked good at first, but that just doesn't work out. So I move the knight. Now I really am threatening to take the bishop. He goes to d7 with the bishop, so he's hit on this idea of pushing the pawn forward and developing his bishop over here. You go knight to d3, though it's a little bit late for him to find this idea. Now I get this pressure on the c-pawn. Goes bishop f4. I go queen to d2. I'm going to come over here to somewhere on this diagonal, and he can't really stop it. He goes g5. I was also threatening to take the f-pawn. Queen f2. He gets his bishop to f5, but I get the pawn. So now I'm a pawn up, and I should go on to win this with careful play. Although I do get a little bit rattled here. Let's see. He plays a5. I go knight to a4 to stop that. He goes queen to b4. Yeah, so knight to a4 was a mistake, and after queen to b4, knight to c3, he could just take that pawn, and we're back to a situation that's even. So I need to play something other than knight to a4 here. Maybe knight to b6 is a good move. Well, I still have to watch out for that double threat. I have to just be aware that he's got this idea of bringing the queen over here to this square. Maybe I should sit with the knight where it is and just move my queen. Yeah, I could offer a trade. Maybe bring the queen over here and bring the knight down this way and let him trade it off. But anyway, maintain control of these squares over here so his queen doesn't get this double attack, and I still have a winning game. Knight a4 actually would allow him to get back to an even position if he had taken on c4. Instead, he played king g6. I went queen to e2 here, looking to create some threats against his king, maybe all the way to that square. And anyway, at this point, he ran out of time. He'd been playing on the increment for a while here. And so it was an interesting game. And I did win in the end. He had some chances, but I think I played pretty well overall. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.